Hello and a warm welcome to all attendees joining today's webinar. We are talking today about mobile apps, what is important for development. My name is Sascha Sander and it's a pleasure for me to take you through a quick tour through today's session. But the key presentation of today's session will be performed by my colleague Stefan LaRocca. Stefan is consulting manager at PITSS and a very seasoned Oracle expert with more than 20 years of technology management and development experience, from IT management to business development up to consulting management. So, Stefan, I hope that you can hear me well.
Yeah, everything's fine. Thank you.
That's great. Great that you're with us. So, talking about mobile.
The presentation.
Yeah, great. Great, that's good. Talking about mobile development in hybrid environments and database applications, backend functionalities and rich internet clients, a good basis in general is essential for an efficient and sustainable development of mobile apps. So this was the invitation for our webinar. A first draft in general can be created quickly, but how to pick an architecture without being unpleasantly surprised by the next release update. This is a first part. We plan a webinar series, and we show you today in this part what to look for when choosing a suitable architecture and how to develop it. So no matter whether you use mobile application framework, mobile cloud, Jet framework, or any other platforms for your project, we will demonstrate how to best prepare for the development of mobile apps. Let's have a quick view on today's agenda. Just like always, I take a quick chance for an update intro about PITSS and PITSS.CON for those attendees who haven't heard from us yet. But then right away, Stefan will share our experience on mobile apps. Main topics are the requirements in the mobile world, talking about the architecture and products, and of course talking about PITSS.CON support on your way going mobile. After the session, and we will have a quick wrap up, we will have the opportunity to discuss all of your questions in a separate Q&A session. And like always, therefore, the technical info to minimize sound problems, all attendees' mics are set on mute during the presentation. You will have the opportunity to ask your questions by chat to any dedicated topics coming up during the presentation. So therefore, please use the feature question at the GoToWebMeeting application. You find this in the right bar of this apps. Please feel free to log in all your questions during the presentation. We will discuss all of your questions at the end of the session in the Q&A session. So, PITSS.CON since '99. We are 17 years in the business now. We're working globally directly from our headquarters in Germany with 2 locations. We are targeting the UK market out of London, Twickenham. For the Americas, we are acting with a daughter company, PITSS LLC, out of Troy, Michigan. Moreover, we collaborate in various regions with dedicated and certified PITSS partners, providing our solution and expert services in their countries, backed by PITSS directly. We are a team of 80 very experienced experts. We are a leading provider of tools for Oracle Forms. We work successfully with hundreds of companies internationally. We're performing forms modernization, analysis, and ongoing development based on our solution, PITSS.CON, the PITSS product, the PITSS solution, and our solution is not only a one-time disposable product, of course, depending on customer premises, but in general, a short and long-term and multifunctionality tool The focus is to reduce costs, to improve development processes, and further application maintenance. So therefore, PITSS.CON offers a huge stack of functionality, and it's known as a very innovative product for analyzing, for maintaining Oracle forms, or even supporting the evolvement of these applications to the latest Oracle technology stack or infrastructures like ADF or mobile application framework. Just a small focus is in forms, of course. It's more than 20 years. We have a huge experience starting with Forms 2.0 up to 12c, latest Forms version. Since a couple of years, we are focused, of course, and care about service-oriented architecture. Since 8 years, we're doing ADF modernization within Forms, but of course, experience since a couple of years, of course, also with mobile applications, experienced in real-world projects as well. That means, finally, that our customers really found globally, and our product working on partner only. Of course, many very customers around the globe, whether in Europe, in Middle East, North Africa, Asia Pacific, or in the Americas. And if you are particularly interested in the one or for us, we do have reference or success story in place. Okay, so that's a quick update to PITSS.CON, and I would like to hand over to Stefan so that he can focus on the main topic of today, mobile apps. What is important for your development? Okay.
Wonderful.
I hand over to you, Stefan, and enjoy the session.
Yes, I do. Okay, I hope you're now able to see my slides.
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. Perfect. Yes, I'm a warm welcome from my side too, and I'm happy to be able to share my thoughts and my experience during developing backend functionalities for mobile apps into the audience. And while starting bringing some information together and see how could I start, what is the best way to start into these presentation, I found a very old cover from years and years ago. What I'm focused on is the new kid in town, and the new kid is, for more or less, from my side, from my opinion, the mobile architecture, or the way how we are able to present data on mobile devices. The guys on the cover really remember times where host or mainframes applications are top and the best to do. We see changes to client server over web technology, and now we're talking about mobile application, and that's what been taking place or took place in the last years or decades, while changing architecture, changing infrastructure, and so on. Today, we like to put the focus more or less to the backend side. If we develop application, we have to divide what's going on the infrastructure side, what's going on the backend side, what is about data model and transaction handling and so on. And on the other side, what is going on the front end, what is the user interface, what is the user experience. As it's seen in those pictures, don't forget the backend side. It's a very, very important and more or less the huge part of the complete application. So today, let's focus on backend side. If we start implementing for a mobile application, we have some issues to take care about, which are normally not relevant for web application or client-server application. The first and very obvious one is the offline and online support. So if we're talking about mobile apps, we have to face the situation that our application is not available all the time, that the back-end side could be cut it off due to while you're on the run in the airplane, or while you're located with very slow connection and so on. So if you start thinking about mobile backend systems, you have to keep in mind every time online and offline support. That's for local storage, for conflict management, and so on. The other side, or next one, is loose coupling. It is not a good idea to have a pessimistic transaction handling on a mobile device. Think about locking a database record and then your power is getting off, or you switch your mobile phone off or whatever, so the lock will persist in the database side. So you have to trust on optimistic transaction, you have to trust on a caching mechanism on the mobile device. But with mobile device, we also get a couple of new data structure we won't face before. If you have a mobile app, it makes sense to get in contact with the camera features, to get in contact with the location features. What I'm very, very happy about reading months ago with the new latest mobile application framework release is the fact that we can use beacons for inside location. Think about you are inside a big building and want to have a navigation inside the building, so we are able to to choose beacons for that. And that's all devices that are all input data we are not facing during web application. But this influences also our backend system. We have to handle camera, pictures, contact information, GPS information, and so on. But not only these functionalities, also when you think about the front end, that will influence the backend system. We have a smaller UI. You are not able to have a high definition screen on a small tablet or small smartphone. You have to reduce your information. You have to split down perhaps existing processes into a couple of pieces to make them available on the mobile phone. So that will influence the behavior in the backend side, how you can retrieve and requery your data. We usually do a good job for our user if we reduce the amount of text to input. Everybody knows if you like starting texting on a smartphone, it's more or less the younger guys and ladies are very familiar with that, but it doesn't make sense to type in 2,000 characters in the field for remarks on a mobile phone. So you think about changing more, using more LOVs, using more checkboxes, or on the other hand, integrate something like Theory to input more text fields. And last but not least, there's a different user experience coming up with these smartphones and tablets. Everybody is familiar with logging in with this Google account or Facebook account. It's very useful to have push notification and so on. But simple for push notification, you have to change your backend to be able to push any notification. So you see there are a couple of points and issues to take into your consideration when you start implementing or changing the implementation of your backend system. Okay, but we don't start on the green fields. Typically, if you think about mobile enhancement, you think on mobile enhancement to an existing application. So we try to reuse most of the existing application. What could we reuse? Simply the database, no matter it's the data store, the table structure, the data model itself is good enough more or less for the mobile world. But it will be helpful if you are able to use existing processes and existing logic inside your application and provide them to the mobile front end. Because the most of your work is not inside the database, it's not inside the data model. The most of the work you've done in the last years are inside the business logic. So it makes sense to reuse them. But as we see, it doesn't make sense to use everything of your application. So perhaps you will only split out a couple of pieces of your application to enable them for mobile devices. How could you achieve that? And that's a very fancy part in PITSS.CON. We allow the possibility to, we call it record a user story or record a process. With this, you are able to have a deeper understanding on your application, not only how it is implemented, more or less how it is used. So what we do is with PITSS.CON, based on PL/SQL side logic, this logic could resist in database procedures, in shell scripts, in forms application, in reports, in Apex application, or whatever PL/SQL-based logic is in. We are able to inject each and every PL/SQL block with more or less a little bit like a trace or a remark. So the block itself says to the metadata repository, hey, I'm here, I'm running right now. And we are able to enhance an existing application to start the recording of a process. So the user said, okay, the documentation of these production line, I like to have it on my mobile device later on. Right now, I have to note my information on a sheet of paper and go back to the PC and type it into my Forms application. But this process itself, I'd like to have on my mobile device. So inside your Forms application, press a button and work with your Forms application. And at the end, you press the same button again, and PITSS.CON is knowing what's going on inside your application. In detail, we inject a couple of lines. We made some annotation so that we are able to have a deeper understanding on your source code. So if you look at the source code on the left side, you see a couple of entries starting with PC key underline record log story. And you can see we log the first line. We can log inside an if statement, inside at the end of the line. So we understood what's going on in your procedure. The best feature out of that is that's not only available by willing of the user, so he pressed start or stop of the button. We also are able to have more or less what we call silent recording. That means we inject the overall application and let it run over and over days by days and see what's going on in your application. That's the reason for that is a couple of statistics over applications show that only 10% of the application is used 90% of the day for 90% of the users. So that, on the other hand, you can say there will be hotspots in my application which are used day by day for most of the users. And if I'm able to enhance, enlarge, or make this part even a little bit more better, perhaps while I have the availability to make it available over a smartphone or a tablet, you can enhance your underlying application with an amount of value. So with this feature of silent recording, we are able to deeply understand the application and suggest parts for best mobile support. Okay, so what's going on next? What are the requirements? Before we see, we are able to identify a couple of processes, but before we could come to a best solution for architecture, we have to answer a couple of questions. And these questions are, for mobile, a little bit different. Should we support online or offline? If we should support offline mode of the smartphone, you can imagine we have to double your data on the phone, or on the mobile device. That's not a big deal because our framework from Oracle, Mobile Application Framework, support us with the availability of a SQLite database on the device, but we have to think about replication of data on the device. Next, what we think about is what's about the statements for changing data. CRUD is standing for create, read, update, and delete data. So what is your application good for? Is it only reading information out of a database? It's just an information system? Very easy, very simple. You finish, more or less. But if you update data, you have to think about a transaction logic. Think about you and your partner are able to update the same record, and you are both in an offline mode. So how can we solve the conflict? At the end, we have to provide backend functionalities to detect transaction conflicts and to solve them. So that is directly influence the architecture. What's going on with the device features? That's the next question. Should I like to store GPX data? Should I store pictures? What is going on with the email support? Should I be able to access to my emails from my backend system too? What is the idea for that? You see, we can capture these data on my mobile device, but we have to store it in the backend system. What is about single sign-on? Do you like to hand over the functionality to your users that they should able to log in with their Facebook account or Google Plus account? Should you enhance your backend system for single sign-on on mobile device? That's more or less different to single sign-on on the PC. And last but not least, you have to think about the storage. When you're taking pictures or making some scan information, would you like to store these information on the middle tier, on a cloud storage, or should it go to the backend and should be available over there to my backend systems too? All these are questions which influence the architecture in our backend system. So let's start with a very simple, but more or less the most architecture used for mobile applications. As we see, we'll start with the database. Yes, the database is inside, and we need a database for the storage itself, but we need a WebLogic server or a web server in the middle, because all our communication between the mobile device and our backend systems will go through the application server. The good information for that is we have good tools like the Jdeveloper available from Oracle to implement, on one hand, all necessary backend functionality on the WebLogic server, and with the same tool and the same project, we could implement the front end for our mobile device. To bring the application to your device, it's handy to have the application deployed to an App Store or Google Plus Store that must or has not only the Apple App Store. You can set up an own App Store inside your company to deploy your application on the device. That is what most of our customers do. They have set up an own App Store inside the company, and all applications for the employees are deployed over this App Store. The deployment profile, all signatures which are necessary to deploy these applications to the App Store are also available over the Jdeveloper. So that are all those tools which are necessary to set up the application. To have a deeper look inside the Oracle application for that, it's MAF, Oracle Mobile Application Framework. That consists of so-called device native container. It's a runnable Java environment. And inside this application, I can use my implementing ADF mobile views and controller and local HTML files. And I can use the device services for getting the contact information, the pictures, the GPS location, using the telephone functionality, and so on. For the backend, we see the most and very appropriate way to communicate with the backend services are REST services. So at the end of our webinar, we like to show that we have to base all information on REST services to provide my application. Okay, what are the possible solutions for from Oracle to that? Let's start from small to the biggest one. The very smallest one is math only. That's what you really need. It's a WebLogic server in a very simple way and mobile application framework. And that's it. With this, you can start implementing your own apps based on the database. If you'd like to go on with a little bit more comfortable, you can use the mobile suite. These enhance the math functionality with a couple of adapters for the enterprise service bus, for some security features, for SAP application, for e-business application, and so on. If you like to get more comfortable solutions and more security features, there is a mobile security suite available. This allows you with products for device management, such a situation when your device is lost or stolen. You can remotely remove your application from the device. You can have single sign-on functionalities with other applications on the device, and so on. And last but not least, if you would like to have an environment with no hosting in your backend systems, you can come back to Mobile Cloud Service. That's a service from Oracle with all infrastructure available. You see it in the next slide. The Mobile Cloud Service comes together with a couple of features for analytics and monitoring, but at the end, you have a connectors to your backend system, and therefore we are once more on REST services. And on the other side, provide a couple of mobile APIs to implement application itself with math or native functionalities with iOS or Xcode or Android or whatever, or with Jet frameworks. But that is more or less focus of the next webinar. So let's focus once more on the backend system. So belonging to the backend system, we have the database and the application for the WebLogic server. And as I said before, we don't start on the green field. We have a couple of functionalities. And if we take a deeper look onto these functionalities, we see there's a couple of PLSQL code, lines and lines and millions of lines in PLSQL code in perhaps forms application, in reports. Perhaps you have a couple of cron jobs running as jobs based on time frames. You have perhaps reports creating with the SQL developer. You use BI Publisher with log-on, log-off features based on PLSQL, and so on. So if you like to reuse some of those written PLSQL code for your mobile application because you said, oh, the validation inside forms is very helpful, or I have a procedure written in my report and I like to have them running on the mobile device, you have to think about using the PLSQL also for your mobile world. And for a second, let us consider all our PLSQL code as a PLSQL middle tier, which need a database to run. So for a twinkle of an eye, you can distinguish the database as a storage and the database as running PLSQL code. Hey, fancy. But we have a couple of restrictions with PLSQL. What is it? We have, if we think about PLSQL, we have also a stateful context. That means you can store and bound your procedures to information belonging to your session. If you start the session, it's a useful way to perhaps store some global information into package variables. Or you decide inside your code belonging to the user who's logged in. Or you have some context information in the session context, like for VBD or whatever. That is not so good if we think about the mobile world, because there is no directly access. No, it's not bounding from the user sitting on the smartphone in the train to a database session on the backend side. There's no one-to-one relation. We have so much bridge between, we have so much caching mechanisms in between, we have so much pools in between that we are not knowing inside our PITSS.CON code who is the guy on the back end or on the front end in the smartphone just calling these procedures. So we have to see that we are able to unstateful or have more stateless PITSS.CON code. So if we compare PITSS.CON and Java, Java on the one other hand is the preferred language for the middle tier. So if we implement all our functionalities on the WebLogic server, we rely on Java. So that is the one hand. Because it's very fully integrated into the application server, it's best base for REST and SOA service, and we can reuse them in all other modern UI components like ADF or like Apex or whatever. On the other hand, we have PITSS.CON codes. We have a couple of invests in existing PITSS.CON code and the integration of all the other backend systems. That means DBMS scheduler, forms, reports, BI publisher, and so on is very good with PITSS.CON. So why should we throw this away and implement it in a new way? So it's a cost-saving manner. We like to save our invest in coding, and if we don't rewrite any code, we ensure the quality because the application is running right now, and if we don't touch the system, it's good for the next step. So we see the best way what we could achieve is to combine these two worlds, and that's the next step. How can we achieve that? So what we try to set up in architecture is in between the database and the WebLogic server, we have to put the man in the middle who translate our Java requirements to a database backend based on tables and PITSS.CON procedures. And these men in the middle can be done by three different ways. The first way is let's use the Jdeveloper to do that. The Jdeveloper have a very fancy feature to set up Java objects based on tables on PITSS.CON procedures. So we create a couple of objects inside the Java world with have a one-to-one relationship to an object in the backend. And with this, we can create a RESTful service on top of these Java objects. So with these two steps, we achieve architecture like the picture shown on the left-hand side. We have the database in the backend, and on top of the database, we set up a so-called ADF business components, ADF BC. That's a part of the usual ADF framework, and it's bound inside the model project to object to the database. And based on these ADF BC components, we can set up web services, and the web services can consume later on from our UI, our mobile UI. That's very easy, very handy, very straightforward. The second possibility to put in the middle, it's coming up from Apex. Apex is part of the database and itself an application framework for database applications. And Apex use for its own lifecycle, for its own deployment, a so-called Oracle REST data service. This REST data service is a piece of code which you deploy on an application server. That could be a WebLogic server or Glassfish or Tomcat or whatever. And inside these REST data service, you have connector to the database model or to a document store based on JSON or to other databases like the Oracle Sql database. This REST service could also be used to set up a REST service based on a procedure, a package, or a table. So with this man in the middle, we achieve a more or less microservice-based API. We have a backend service with very small functionalities, with very, very distinguished services. And these services could be consumed by any front end and any technology. That could be JavaScript, Java, .NET, whatever you want. So as you see, we have two ways to put the man in the middle. So we have two ways achieving a RESTful integration of our PLSQL code inside the database. On one hand, ADF-BC. On the other hand, it could be Apex with the REST data service. At the end, both are more or less like a bridge to the WebLogic server, and on the WebLogic server, I provide these functionalities to the mobile front end, and that's all based on REST service. With these, let us say, REST enabling the backend functionality, we are on the good way on the first step to enable our complete backend to a SOA world. That's what we achieve more or less, by the way. It's just getting by design, by definition. REST is also the technology using inside the SOA bus, and we can, with this change in our architecture pattern, we can enable our application to be a part in the SOA world. And next step, what's also possible, that is an overall architecture for a complete mobile architecture from the Oracle perspective. But what you see, let us focus on the lower right part. And what you see is the enterprise application provided with web services, web APIs. And that's what we talk about, creating REST services on top of your database objects. And that is the enterprise API. And this is the first step if you want to go to the big picture at the end with SSO integration for mobile device, perhaps. So that's a useful but also a necessary step to provide, and you can grow with your application if you're based on these REST services. Grow with the application, that's a good point to discuss. So the simplest application, the simplest basic architecture you can imagine is a database, a simple application server like WebLogic server in the middle, and the app on your smartphone, on your mobile device. That's very easy, and with this you can start. And if you hold on the pattern and think about the pattern to every functionality is REST enables, you can grow over and over with the next layers of your application. What does it mean in the Oracle world? So if you start with math, it's very simple, and I think it's very easy. And we have a couple of customers in Germany starting with this approach, with the minimum invest in license costs. Start with math. You can license math with per user account for $110. It's the values from the actual technical price list from Oracle. That's a license per named user, and you can start with this. You can, on the other hand, if you like to deploy your application in a public app store like Google Store or like Apple App Store, you have to pay for your app, and that's amount of $55,000. But on the other hand, for in-house application, it's very easy to start with math. The mobile security suite is only available per processor because it's part of the infrastructure with the adapters and with the security options. The mobile security suite is based per employee because you are secure your complete company. All applications running on any mobile device of your employees from your companies are secure and surround with these functionalities, so you're based on the employee. And at least the mobile cloud service, you get rid of all your infrastructure questions. The pattern, the architecture pattern behind is the same. You have a database in the cloud or on-premise, and you provide all functionalities from the backend function, from the backend database via REST service to the mobile front end. So the software architecture is the same. but you get rid of all your devices of your hardware and can use mobile cloud service for that. For this decision, you have to think about the API calls. So at the end, you don't pay per user or per processor. You even have an influence on the processor used, but you pay per call. So every usage of your application is tracked by the mobile cloud service, and you have an amount to pay. Okay, but you see, if you start small with math and decide for your new architecture, you can grow with Oracle, and you can grow on the other end with PITSS.CON. And that's what I'd like to bring to an end, the most important information. How can PITSS.CON help to support you on this way to achieve such a REST-enabled application? The first part is, I think it's the most amazing one. It's the way of record user stories and get an understanding of your application and the usage of your application and the inside of information about how the process is running through your source code. So you are able to split out, to cut out only those relevant parts of the application which has to go to the mobile world. And that's very helpful, very strange, very good. As we see, the next step is we like to bring most of the PLSQL code, which is outside the database in such couple of backend systems. We like to bring that backend PLSQL code inside the database to understand the database more or less. That's what we like to introduce for today, like a PL/SQL middle tier. So let's gather all information, all source code from PLSQL inside the database, and with a twinkle of an eye, we can set up REST services based on that. And that's the third one. If you follow the webinar very, very good, you heard about, I said 3 possibilities to create web services. The third one of them is Jdeveloper, the other one is Apex, the third one is PITSS.CON itself. And if we have a huge amount of objects to go to the web service world, it could be very boring to click 100 times through a wizard of PLSQL developer, or sorry, to Jdeveloper, and use wizard 1, wizard 2, wizard 3, put in my naming convention, and so on. With 1 hour thinking about naming convention and 1 click in PITSS.CON, we can create web services on thousands of objects in the background. So we generate the web services, and more or less we are able to check whether or not your PLSQL code is web service enabled or not. If you have stateful information in your PLSQL code, we provide you with a couple of solutions how you can web service enable your source code. That's the bullet 3 and 4. We check the web service functionality and generated the web service for you. And last but not least, as I said in the beginning of the webinar, we have a new kid in town. There's mobile coming up, and with mobile, the application or the town itself grows and get bigger and bigger. That doesn't mean that we throw away any of the other parts. So at the end, the dependencies will getting more complex. You have another part of application you look for. If we change database backend systems in the future, perhaps you add another column to an existing table, you change the signature of the procedure. You have not to look only inside the database. You have to say, oh, is there a REST service consuming my PLSQL code, or is a mobile device depending on my table? So the dependencies grows and grows and grows, and PITSS.CON keep an eye on your dependencies. It's no matter if they are inside the database or if they are used by a web service or any other backend functionalities. PITSS.CON is taking care of that and give you the availability of dependency checks and search and replace functionalities. So you see, PITSS.CON has a lot of features to help you going into the mobile world in the first step with your backend system. I hope this was very understandable and very helpful for you. What's coming up next? The next webinar, we'd like to show you what's going on in the front-end side and how fancy it could be to create some front-end based on that back-end system we generated in today's webinar. So with this, I end my part, and I'd like to hand over to Sasha once more for perhaps upcoming questions.
Stefan, thank you. Thank you very much. You already have the slide here. Yeah, I would like to encourage all attendees to place your questions in the question channel question feature. If you have any questions that are coming up right now out of your brain coming up during this very, very interesting session, Stefan, I'm pretty confident that our attendees realize potential benefits for their project requirements as well. You told us about the new kid in town. It's very, very interesting. I think we're involved already in very interesting projects, so for sure we can share the one or other information about real-life projects. If you're interested in, challenge us at any time. Would be happy to answer your questions. Come back to Stefan, come back to me. If you don't have any question at this point, Stefan already pointed out that we have a follow-up webinar. I think it's not scheduled. The final date is not scheduled yet, but we'll let you know as soon as we have the dates available for this upcoming session, upcoming event. On the other hand, challenge us. We do have a couple of offers where we can support you. As an example, any support or training in MAF. Stefan, if I remember well, it's about a 2-day session.
Yes.
Yes, where we can support you, that we can train you. Probably you have some topics or content of these 2 days, Stefan. I think it's not only a standard training, but give you more input. Yeah.
Yes, we offer 2 days training for math to see how on one day how it's going on to set up a backend system, what's necessary to create the web services, how I can achieve that goal. And on the other hand, how easy it is to implement front end and get information from mobile devices like camera, like contact information, and so on. So you can see in those 2 days the complete life cycle of the development of a mobile app. And on the other hand, what I missed to say is you can follow us on YouTube. We have a couple of videos
UK or other regions global. My colleague David Brown at dbrown@PITSS.CON or myself at ssander@PITSS.CON, or check out regularly our website www.pits.com. So at this time, again, Stefan, thank you very much. Thank you for your very interesting session.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
And this time, let me thank you all attendees. We're looking forward to meeting you. Have a great day wherever you are, or a great evening. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.